Hi, welcome to another episode of Small Doses with Laura Sell. Today, we're going to talk about Black history, or maybe the lack thereof. How about that? Well, back in 2009, Chris Rock, the comedian, did a documentary and it was called Good Hair. And in the documentary, Chris talked about Black hair care products, specifically talking about Black hair care products for Black women. Oh, he covered shampoos, conditioners, oils, creams, potions, lotions, whatever we put on our hair. He also talked about wigs, hair weave, what types and textures of hair people use. So it was kind of a fun documentary. It was tongue in cheek. It did have some good information in it about, places where hair comes from and those types of things. But in it, Chris made a statement about how Black women like to keep it a secret about the things that we put on our hair. It's like, don't tell anybody, I don't want anybody to know. And what Chris was saying is that, you know what? White people probably don't really care what we're putting on our hair. They're not checking for that. So, it was put in a fun kind of way, but it makes you think. It's true. White people probably don't care what we put on our hair. Unless they're cosmetologists, they probably think we use the same products that they use on their hair. So anyway, I find that to be interesting because I also find it to be true that the most liberal-minded white people in America probably aren't checking for us about a lot of anything. It's just not something that they're looking for on a daily basis. What are Black people doing today? No malice intended, just probably not what they're thinking about. So all of that brought me to remember back in the 90s, I went to diversity training. I had to go for my job. And in this training, one of the presenters said that white people don't think about race on a daily basis because they don't have to. However, many Black people do think about it on a daily basis because we have to navigate life in a society created by and for white people. Now, granted, America has made some strides over the years. I mean, there are things that Black people can do today that they couldn't do even when I was a kid. Okay, so 59 years ago, we're able to do some things we couldn't do. However, we still have a very long way to go. I personally want to know, why is it taking so long to get so much liberty that we deserve? But anyway, so I watch Real Time with Bill Maher on a weekly basis. And I noticed within the last few months or so, he's been going on this tear about woke people not really being woke, or maybe they too woke, or whatever it is he says. And I think he went on a rant one time about all of this stuff about, Black people, this and that, and what's going on in the classrooms, and that we're trying to make white people feel guilty about whatever has happened in American history. And I don't think anybody's trying to make anybody feel guilty about anything. I think guilt is you take it on or you don't. Either you are or you aren't. Nobody's saying that anyone is guilty. I think what is being required is just acknowledge that there are things in American history that have happened. And you can take onus if you want to, or you could pass the buck. So anyway, Friday night, September 10th, he read some quotes from teachers who have been quitting their jobs, leaving their positions as teachers. And the bottom line with this group of people that he was reading about, from my understanding, from what I was listening to, basically it seems as if these people are leaving the classroom because they felt that they were being forced to support a liberal agenda. Well, I'm going to read a quote from Bill on his show, so bear with me here while I pull that up. So he was saying, they're making children, making them hyper aware of race in a way that wouldn't have otherwise be. I saw last night on the football game, Alicia Keys saying, "Lift every voice and sing," which I now hear is called the Black National Anthem, end quote. He said some other things. I'm not going to cover that right now. But anyway, well, Bill, Mr. Maher, and other white people who didn't know, Lift Every Voice and Sing has been the Black National Anthem for a very long time. So let me give you a little history, just in case you didn't know. Lift Every Voice and Sing was written in 1900 by James Weldon Johnson, an African-American author and a civil rights activist. Written in 1900. See, that was left out of your history book. That's where we're going. His younger brother, R. Rosamond Johnson, an African-American composer and singer, composed the music to that poem and made it a song. In 1919, the NAACP dubbed it the Negro National Anthem for its power in voicing a cry for liberation and affirmation for African-American people. So that's a little Black history that you didn't get at school, huh? So my entire 59 years of life, this has been the Negro National Anthem, which we started calling the Black National Anthem when we started calling ourselves Black, okay? So this is not new, Bill. And this is why I'm here today, because there are so many things in American history that was done by African Americans that the general public doesn't know about. Why? Because white people ain't checking for us like that. They don't know. And when they learn these things, like the 1619 Project, they're alarmed, and it causes all kinds of emotions and feelings. And why do we have two national anthems? We've always had two in my lifetime. So from 1919 till now, that has been known to us Black folk as the Black National Anthem. And in many places, when you go and you hear that song, we're either standing or we're standing with fists raised as a sign of solidarity and power. Okay, so this isn't new, Mr. Maher. This is a historical thing that in all of your awareness and your liberalness, that you just happen to not know. Why? Because, you're a liberal and you're proud of it. You talk about it all the time, and you're going to remain a liberal. And maybe you feel super woke and connected to Black folk because you've smoked some weed with some popular Black celebrities. And so maybe because you've done that and you've hung out with some really cool Black people, you maybe voted for a Black president, that somehow this makes you feel like, well, I'm not a racist. I smoked weed with some of the best Black people, and I voted for a Black man, and I even gave to his country, contributed to his campaign to the first Black president. So you're not going to make me feel guilty. You're not going to make me feel like a racist. Well, nobody's trying to make you feel guilty or feel like anything. If you're feeling anything, that's on you. Now, if you're being enlightened and informed about some things that make you uncomfortable, then so be it, because you're not all knowing just because you hang out with a few Black people that, are famous. Because a lot of Black history, they probably don't know. I'm just telling you what I think. So now, just because you hang out with a lot of Black people and you don't have a card to be a member of the Klan doesn't erase you from possibly being a racist. Now, not a malicious racist, not a racist with malintent that wants to hurt someone. You just may be racist by default because you assume that because you have these relationships that you don't harbor any prejudices or any of that kind of stuff. Everybody got a little stuff hanging around that they're not sure about or they don't know about, because you don't know what you don't know till you know, okay? So now, this is where the problem is. History is not being taught correctly in our schools, okay? So when Hannah Nicole Jones started the 1619 Project, all that is white and all that is holy was shaken in America because America was being forced to acknowledge part of the ugly past. So see, you got some Americans that would love to just think that history in America started in 1776. Okay, well, that might be when you decided that this was going to be a country and you were going to have a constitution and all that stuff. But your history started when you started coming here and doing stuff to people. Okay, so 1619 brought a light to the first enslaved people who were brought here. And so, we have to address the fact that when people were being brought here, some were prisoners and indentured servants. And so what happened when they started bringing Blacks over here, some were indentured servants and some were just chattel. But it got kind of cloudy as to how to figure out who's who. So what happened? They just decided, well, you know what? The white indentured servants, they can work their way to freedom. After they do how much years they need to do to pay off whatever, they'll be free. The ones with a little bit more melanin in their skin, they ain't never gonna be free. We're just gonna keep them as chattel and we'll sell them and barter with them and do what we will with them because their skin is darker. So this is just a fact in history that needs to be acknowledged and needs to be understood. Okay, so we're not teaching these things and people don't know. And so when they find this out, oh, they're up in arms. Well, we don't need to teach that because it's making little white kids feel bad. Well, how in the hell do you think little Black kids have been feeling for a long time? Now, I'm not saying that anybody's children need to be feeling bad about anything, but what we need to be is informing our children about everything. And again, if you're feeling bad, that onus is on you. That's not on anybody. If you choose to pick up the mantle to feel bad about something, you can learn something, acknowledge it, accept it, and not have to feel bad about it. No one is ignorant enough to think that you yourself had slaves. We got calendars, we got clocks, we know. The problem is when people are unable and unwilling to acknowledge that these things did happen. So you can't sweep it under the rug and pretend that it didn't happen because it makes you uncomfortable. Because some of us are uncomfortable because we know it happened and we still are getting fallout from those things. There's trauma on our DNA that you can't even imagine. Yeah. So, but that's for another day. Let's get back to the topic at hand. You see, Black people have always known that we've been left out of the history, which is why we have Black History Month, which, here we go, boys and girls, get your ink pens out. We're going to get a little bit more Black history. You see, in 1926, not long after they, made that song, the Negro National Anthem, so just a few years down the road from that, 1926, Carter G. Woodson introduced the concept of Black History Week. It was called Negro History Week because, let's just face it, at that time period, we were called Negroes. So here you go. Negro History Week was always the second week of February. Does anybody know why? Raise your hands. Don't worry about it. I'm going to tell you. So in 1926, the second week of February was chosen to be Negro History Week because it commemorates the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Okay. So in that time frame, Black people in America still considered Abraham Lincoln this great person because of the Emancipation Proclamation. At that point in time, a lot of Black people in America hadn't read his other speeches and didn't know what he really said about Black people. We know now, but that's okay. That was when they chose to commemorate Negro History Week because they revered him for the Emancipation Proclamation. And we're going to let it stand at that. We're not going to slap old Abe around for the other stuff he said. But Abe said some stuff. Anyway, moving forward. So we've always been aware that we've been left out of Black history. We've been left out of the books. So when Black people were included in some of the history books, it's what I call the safe Black people. They would put little excerpts about Booker T. Washington in the books, and a little bit about Frederick Douglass in the books, and Martin Luther King Jr. Only the I Have a Dream speech. They didn't put none of the other stuff Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, and they were very selective about what they said about Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass. But those were what I would call the safe Negroes, or the safe Black people that made it into the history books. You know, I remember when my son was 4th or 5th grade, he had an assignment, and it was a history assignment, and we were getting ready to do some work on it, and he just looked really, really sad. And I said, well, what's wrong? 4th grade, because he was at a predominantly white Christian school. He pointed at his history book, and he noticed that when it was George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or some famous white person, their name was in bold print with like a font, like a 45 size pitch. But if it was a Black person, if it was bold, it would still be much smaller pitch, like a 26. So it would just be like a heading to an outline, not the heading to a chapter. And he noticed that at 9 years old. These are the things that Black kids see, and it affects them. And that's when you have to have Black parents who are aware and who are educated and can talk to their children about why this has happened, but then also make them feel so emboldened and empowered that doesn't matter, because behind me on my bookshelves, we got a whole lot of books by Black people, about Black people, and it's all in bold and big font, so that I did what I needed to do for my little Black children to grow up feeling important in this America. But anyway, let's go on. So these are the safe Negroes that make it into the history books. You know, we've got to do better about disseminating this information and telling our children the truth about history. There's so many contributions Black people have made to American history that have nothing to do with sports, has nothing to do with singing and dancing, okay? We do a whole lot more than entertain you. We won't get into that because we'll save that for another lesson. But this whole point is that Black history is not being taught. And when it is, somehow now in 2021, it's making white people feel some kind of way about finding these things out. So, you know, Bill talked about the Black national anthem as if it was just recently written. He said it in such a derogatory way, like, so now I'm hearing now that you know, well, we needed an anthem to make us feel better at a point when Black people were starting to come around and do some things. Think about it, 1919. This is when right about the time where a whole lot of lynching was happening, and white folks was burning up Black cities and Black towns and bombing things in that period of time. And Black people needed something to hold on to, some level of hope. You know, we're celebrating that we're no longer chattel, but we need some hope out here. These folks killing us, they're not letting us progress. They're not letting us keep things that we've worked hard for. So this is why that Negro anthem came about. We knew we were still unloved and unaccepted and unwanted. You know, the bastardized people who had no country or continent to go back to. Even if we wanted to, however, we had been received to a land who most of our people had never been to, because at this point, so many of the enslaved people had been born and bred right here on this continent. There were at that point just a few people who actually had been from Africa. Okay, so this is so deep that this little short little talk I'm doing with you is not going to get it. You're gonna have to do some research on your own, because I'm not your teacher, but I will lead you to go want to learn something. So what I want to say to my white friends like old brother Bill Maher, don't feel threatened because history is being exposed. Embrace the knowledge. Seek it out. Don't wait for somebody to bring it to you. When you see Alicia Keys singing the Black National Anthem, go Google it. Find out for yourself. Oh, this ain't new. It's been around. A whole lot of stuff is out there on the World Wide Web, on the internet for you to find. So we as a people, and I'm speaking about Black people, we're not willing to sit idly by and wait anymore. You know, our voting rights has been challenged, and I've asked and I've said for years, and no one has answered my question. I still never understood why the voting rights for Black people had to be an act. Why can't it just be an amendment made to the Constitution and make it a law that we got a right to vote and not have our vote taken away from us from silly things? I still don't understand why. Well, I do understand why, but I don't understand why. You know, but we're not going to sit idly by anymore and wait for scraps. So stop feeling threatened because the truth is being revealed. Stop denying that all of American history has been whitewashed. It has been. American history has been whitewashed to make Americans feel comfortable. And I'm going to leave you with this, and I'm going to be done with this topic for today. Think about it. American history has been whitewashed. Okay. A lot of what we've been done, what we as Black people have done hasn't been told. And a lot of what white people have done has been glorified. And a lot of what white people have done has been minimized and erased because it makes people feel uncomfortable. It's unconscionable that my ancestors could have done these horrible things. Well, they did them, and it is part of our history. So yeah, we can glorify the things that are great, but we do need to bring up the things that are not great. So there's a Zimbabwean proverb that I want to leave you with, and it's all about the whitewashing of American history. Until the lion tells his side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Y'all have a great day. This has been another episode of Small Doses with Laura Sell. Bye.